Hey, what's up? What's going on out there? I was looking at this video with the Hodge twins when they're commenting on an interview with Candace Owens, and she's talking to Nick Fuentes. And this part of the interview was kind of interesting to me. They were talking about Egypt, and Nick Fuentes was saying that so-called Egyptians aren't black or whatever the case may be. And I just thought the commentary was interesting, and it shows how dangerous an uneducated mind is, and especially trying to mask it as comedy, because a lot of people out there will probably take their word for it and Nick's word for it, certain historical facts, and it's kind of sad. That goes for anybody. But I'm going to let the video play and give my 1-2.
Egyptians were not black.
Okay, but you said when they went to Africa, so I just want to...
The interior of Africa in the late 19th century, scrambled
Okay,
for
so
Africa.
we're now knocking Egypt out of Africa.
Well, Egypt is part of northern Africa.
Right.
See, that's another thing too. I looked into this dude's background. I made a video about him before, and you can tell he's a flat out overt racist. He's unapologetic about it, and you can tell. And I don't know what some people see that he is trying to mask it as that he's not that way, but you can tell. Like Stevie Wonder can tell that. And these type of people are, to me, they're basically reincarnations of racial scientists from back in the day. Like when I think of names of Christoph Miners and Blumenbach and Gubido and people like that who actually thought scientific racism was real. Because if you do any research about scientific racism and what it meant, it always put the so-called white man in the center of any logical thinking, thought. Everything came from the so-called white man. People of color, black people, so-called black people, whatever race didn't come up with anything, and they were all savages, and we have them to thank for any type of human advancement in history. That's his type of attitude, and you can clearly see that. And these guys are just tap dancing and just reinforcing those type of attitudes, which is sad.
Africa. You said Africa, so it's not. I'm not trying to get a gotcha. I'm just responding. You're saying Africa.
Sure. Yeah.
It's in Africa. It's Egypt. It's kind of ridiculous to say there was no written language. Well, so I'm just trying to get you to
sure. Egyptians are not Africans.
If I'm not pushing back, the internet will. So.
That's another thing too. I think people relate modern places with how they were historically. Like if you go back in time, ancient times, so-called Egyptians, so-called the majority of the world were dominated by so-called black people. And when I say so-called black people, I mean you can like I'm not talking in a sense of black and white nowadays. I'm talking about, you can say Indians, Dravidians. Indians, look that up if you don't know who they are. Black so-called San people from South Africa. Basically what I'm trying to say is you can get every phenotype from a so-called black person. You get straight hair, you can get curly hair, you can get really tight curly hair, you can get blue eyes, you can get green eyes, you can get light skin, you can get dark skin. All of those traits come from so-called black people, and I'm not talking about black people in the sense that we know it as the world today. I'm talking about if you study, well, if you don't even really have to study it. If you look into albinism, nobody ever brings up where so-called white people come from. So-called white people are basically albinos of so-called black people. And then another thing too is all black people and all are not the same. It's different ethnic groups, different racial groups, etc. He said something key too. He said these places weren't civilized in the interior of Africa, because even if you go on the west coast of Africa, South Africa, North Africa, and some parts, in the middle Africa, it was quote unquote civilized. You still have groups of people in today's day and age that are quote uncivilized, where they don't have any type of civilization, and they don't wear a lot of clothes, and they live pretty much in a primitive manner. So those people still exist today, and that's like all over the world. You can go to Asia, South America, Africa, etc.
Egyptians are not racial Africans. When I say African, I'm saying sub-Saharan Africans.
Sub-Saharan, okay.
Black people yeah, because it is a different race. In sub-Saharan...
And you say, it is a different race. Right? It is a different race. Like this dude, he just embraces all of those attitudes, those scientific racist attitudes. And if you can't see that, you just blind or you just don't care, which is fine. But to his credit, I respect him because he's being straight up. He doesn't care. He's unapologetically, racist, and that's cool. He's going with his move. I don't have anything against that. And another thing too, I was looking into his background. He's a Catholic. So if he says that so-called Egypt was black, then that means that that the Israelites were black. Because if you do any type of studying, like I said, look into archaeology, studying books, writing, paintings, etc., you will see that ancient Israelites and ancient Kemetic Egyptians were so-called black people. But if he admits that, then he has to admit that his God is so-called black. And in his voice, I'm not going to admit that. That never happened. Everything came from a so-called white man. Get over it, you crazy Negroes.
Africa, and Europeans did not penetrate that until late 19th century. They didn't have any of this. To the extent that you have infrastructure in Africa, it's from the Muslims in the Sahel, in the Maghreb, in northern Africa, where the Arabs colonized. And then you had, Carthage.
I'm like, another thing too, the so-called Arabs that exist today, again, are not the ancient Arabs. Those are a mixture of ancient black people and so-called white people, and from Turkic white people from the Eurasian steppe. That's where white people come from, and they don't want to admit it. They want to make it seem like everything in civilization just comes from them. Those people are from the Eurasian steppe. They come from Dravidian Indians, and if you don't believe me, look it up. They come from Dravidian Indian albinos. Those people could not survive in that type of heat, so they had to move into that climate to survive, or they will die. And it's another false thing that they say that certain peoples are certain colors because their skin adapts to certain things. That's false, because it's been dark-skinned people that's been living in Tibet and colder parts of the world for centuries. So that's another thing with your skin tone having something to do with how much UV changing, your skin tone changing based on your UV exposure. That's wrong. It's based on your vitamin D baseline and your total cholesterol. But that's another story for another day.
Egypt, you had ancient civilizations, but sub-Saharan Africa, they didn't have that. You take these people out of that land and put them here, and they're enslaved people. You let them free in a
That's another lie. Like every so-called black person in America is not a descendant from slaves. Now some are, not all. You have some, and this might throw some people off, it might blow some people's minds that don't study history or real history, but you had groups of so-called black people that came from Europe. You had so-called black people who were already here. You had so-called black people who were in part of the slave trade. So it was a combination of those three groups that are here in America. And even if you look up the old slave voyages, the manifestos, but the manifest, you'll see the amount of slave ships that came to America was minimal, or the amount of so-called black people being shipped over here to North America was minimal. Now, if you go to South America, like Brazil, with the Portuguese and stuff like that, that number is way higher. But in America, it's low. So one with some intelligence would think like, where do all these people come from, especially if you were a slave and the conditions weren't the best?
Liberal republic, they're not going to succeed. It's not going to go well for them. And that was one of the arguments against abolition. People said if you free them without any assimilation, without any kind of process for them to be acclimated, they're going to die. And that's exactly what happened. Many of the bottom 10% of the lowest IQ Africans just died off for generations. And it had pardon the expression, but it had a eugenic effect. Because
I was about to say that you can tell he believes in eugenics wholeheartedly. And And he's going to explain why so-called black people in this country are so much smarter than the African is because of eugenics and stuff like that, which is totally false. But I'm going to let him speak for himself.
So over time, if the weakest are dying off, that's one argument for why blacks in America have a standard deviation higher IQ than the blacks in sub-Saharan Africa. So, so I do believe there is something intrinsic going on there. And what makes
Well, I think so too. Like you could go to Africa, in some parts of Africa, and you could see them.
I bet y'all do. I don't know if these dudes are trolling. I'm not gonna lie. They say some funny stuff sometimes, but it's a weird combination of trolling and truth, and I can't tell the difference. Or these dudes just that lost, or they know they have a certain group of people they have to appease to, have that standing or get that type of, funding or whatever, the money that they get or whatever. So they have to have a certain group they have to appease. Because I've seen other interviews they've had with certain people that had, you can tell, bigoted views or racialized views, and they were kind of being trying to appease them, basically, trying to say it lightly, but I bet you they do. But I'm just gonna let a little bit of this go, and just hear the rest of what they had to say.
Living, yeah. It's like, I'm not gonna call them savages, but
they're savages.
Yeah, they're walking around like the women are like naked. Their boobs are hanging. They walk around with big bowls of water on their head and putting. I forget the term. They have these weird piercings and scars all over their face. It's barbaric. And I've seen this one dude take a plate and stick it in his lip. Yeah, they're sticking the plate, and it was in. And they got bones in their nose. Yeah, well, but in that movie.
He talking about bones and they know. Like, that's the thing. I don't know if these dudes are trolling or what. Like, I think they really believe it, and they're trolling. It's like a weird combination of both.
Wakanda? What's that? Black Panther, right? In that movie, they put it in there. It was some dude sitting there with a plate just sitting in the bottom of his lip, just hanging. Dude like a duck-billed platypus.
I ain't gonna lie, dude. These dudes crazy as hell, man.
When you see the camera on these glasses.
All right, but that was the end of the video. That's my view on it. Like I've been saying, the dude Fuentes, he's unapologetically bigoted, racist, whatever you want to call it, and that's okay. He has a right to feeling how he feels. He can live his life however he wants to, whatever. But he can't. But the dangerous thing about some of these people, they're presenting their feelings or opinions as facts, and that's not true. So I'll ask anybody out there with half a brain cell to go do some research, study some archaeology, read some books, ancient books, read the look into the etymology of words and things like that, and you'll get a better understanding. That you can download PDFs from books from the 1900s, 1850s, etc. So do your research and really educate yourself. Because if I came out and I said, "Oh, I'm Albert Einstein," people will be in an uproar. Like, that's not what Albert Einstein looked like, blah, 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 blah. So you get my point, man. But anyways, leave your commentary. Let me know what you think.